Good afternoon, guys. Hey, it's Lindsay here. Find Your Freedom Coaching. Just wanted to come on today and quickly chat about, as I'm going through and talking about motivation and mindset and behavioral change, been getting a lot of questions about like what is behavioral change, what it's all about. And I wanted to talk today about readiness to change because I know a lot of people come to me when they're like something's happening in their life and they realize that they need to make a change, but sometimes they're not always 100% ready to make that change. And it's sort of it's a tough situation because of course I want to help people when they're needing help. But it's really difficult sometimes when that happens and somebody they're not really ready, I should say. So first off, let me talk a little bit about what behavioral change is, and then we can kind of get right into it and I'll give some examples. So behavioral change can refer to really like any transformation or modification of your behavior around something. And it's a tricky thing because change in general is really difficult. It's never easy. It's difficult to break old habits or adopt new ones. So often success only comes when we're ready to make those changes. And one way to figure out our readiness factor is to take a look at the various various stages of change. And I was going to go through them today and give some kind of real life examples so you kind of get an idea of what behavioral change is. So the 5 stages of what we call transtheoretical model of change is, well, I'll go through the 5 stages. So the first stage is the pre-contemplation. So usually this happens when someone really isn't even thinking about taking action or making a change within the short term, like in the next couple of months. Meaning like it's not even on their radar. An example of this is like really like an avoidance stage. Like normally, maybe I'll give a real life example of what happens often when people come to me, because typically it's around weight loss or health in some way. And typically this happens when someone's like attempted to make changes to their health in the past and they've done it a bunch of times and they failed. So I know a lot of us feel like they've been in that situation before. So you've failed in the past a bunch of times trying to accomplish something health-wise, and you're really like, all right, you kind of given up, right? You're kind of like, well, I've tried all these things, nothing's going to work for me. So it's sort of something that is important in the back of your mind, but it's not on your radar to take action on it anytime soon. So that's the first phase. Second phase is contemplation. So this is when we really become aware of what's needed, that changes are needed, and we start to think about that we need to make some changes in the next few months. Now it's on our radar. And an example of this can be like you go to put on a pair of pants and you notice they felt uncomfortably tight, right? And it's like it sparks something in our brain to be like, oh, okay, we gotta like make a change here, right? The next phase would be preparation, and that's where it's like when you're really like intentional about being ready to take action. So this is like, you're already planning ahead of what you're going to be doing this month to take action about making a change. So an example of this is like, you went to go see your doctor and you spoke about losing some weight. And you're at that stage where like enough is enough. Like you're ready to make that change. Again, so that's like, this is like, a huge one. This is like an important stage, because this is where it's really like you're on that cusp of being like ready. The fourth phase is action. So this is when you've been already in action already. You've been making these changes, maybe for a few months. A good example of this is like, let's say you've like decided to remove processed foods from your diet and you've added in more servings of fruits and vegetables. Or you started a fitness program, you started going to the gym 3 times a week. And that's like your action, and you've been consistent with those actions. So that would be like the action phase where you're in action. Then the last phase, and this one's super important because this is the maintenance phase, and this is when you've made very specific modifications. So this is where it starts to become more of a lifestyle change for people. And this is like the eye-opening part for many people when they make it a lifestyle change and not just like this sort of like, oh, I'm forced to make this change. And again, like I said, this is the phase that's like a game changer for most people, because you're doing the actions that will ultimately like help you reduce the possibility for relapsing back to like old habits or old ways of doing things. An example I would give for this one is like, for me, I would say like my clients, I would see them being in maintenance phase is like them following a nutrition and workout regimen that I give them, like an actual protocol. So they're following a very specific way of eating and exercising every day. Like for most people, it's like following their fixed portions and doing their daily workouts. So for a lot of people, that becomes like, that's a huge thing for most people to say like, oh, it's so easy now for me to throw on, click my TV on and put on my 30-minute workout and eat according to my portions. And that way it fits into my lifestyle. And then what happens from there is that they kind of like, they can't even foresee going back to the old lifestyle that they had, because this is now, it kind of becomes easy to follow that lifestyle once you've been doing it, and you kind of learn, because you're kind of educating your brain. Oh, thanks for the love. Who just did that? You're kind of re-educating your brain as to what you need to get results. And eventually you realize, oh, okay, like I now know what I need to do. So it can take a few rounds of going through these stages, and each time you might like adopt new habits, and you might get rid of some of the unhealthy ones. But again, going back to a theme that we talked about yesterday and the day before, was that awareness is so important, because if you're not aware of, what your bad habits are and adopting new ones, if you're not aware of where you are in as far as being ready, it can really lead to the success of it or the unsuccess of whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish. And I would say working with a professional can save you so much time and money, because it can kind of help gauge where you're at in that entire spectrum of readiness. So I would say I'm going to be offering something super fun. I'm going to be offering free, kind of like a free consultation, so to speak. So it'll be like a free coaching session, a free behavioral change coaching session, where we're going to work together and in 30 minutes figure out where you're at within behavioral change, and what we can do to modify something that you're working through in your life in some way, whether it's a life goal, a career goal, a health and wellness goal, whatever it is. I'd be more than happy to help. So I'll be reposting this video a little bit later, and I will add the link below to sign up for a free coaching session. All right, guys, thanks so much for joining me today.